four-way stops, everybody has a stop. These stops might also be called four directions, all way, and all directions. I'll be referring to them as all-way stops because in some situations, it can be a stop for everybody at an intersection where there might not necessarily be four stops. For example, in this case, there are only three stops because the perpendicular street in front is a one-way street to the left, so there won't be any vehicle coming from the left. In this case, there are also three stops, but that's because there's no street to the right. In this case, there are only two because the street I'm on is a one-way street, so there won't be any vehicle coming from the front, and there is no street to the right. In all those situations though, everybody arriving at the intersection has a stop. So I'll be referring to all these situations as all-way stops. You'll see a lot of these in residential zones, where most intersections have all-way stops. For tips on how to determine if it's a two-way or all-way stop, you can watch my previous video, the link will be in the description. The way priorities work at an all-way stop is whoever arrives first goes first. If two or more people arrive at the same time, whoever is on the right has priority. So let's say in a situation like this, the black vehicle has priority because he is to the right of the yellow vehicle. If three people arrive at the same time, like here, it's the green vehicle because she's to the right of everybody. She's to the right of the black vehicle, which in turn is to the right of the yellow vehicle. So she has priority. You can also see this situation as whoever doesn't have anybody to their right has priority. So the green vehicle is the only one that doesn't have anybody to their right, so she has priority. Then it's the black one because he's to the right of the yellow one, and the yellow one goes last. Now if four people arrive at the same time, there's no priority anymore because everybody is to the right of everybody else. So in this case, you'll have to use good old communication, hand signs and so on. Four people stopping at the same time doesn't happen very often at all-way stops because if the street was busy enough for that to happen often, the city would probably have installed a traffic light instead. But a situation where that happens a lot is if the traffic lights are not working because of a blackout or the city cut the power for maintenance, for example. In that situation, it acts as an all-way stop, the priorities are the same. And in that case, sometimes there will be a lot of movement. It can be a bit overwhelming for beginners. So in this case, you'll need to analyze a lot, and one thing that will be important here is not to hesitate too much. Otherwise, you'll never be able to go. So come to a complete stop, analyze, and then when it's your turn to go, start advancing a bit slowly to let the other people know that you're about to go. Now here's a question I had from Americo in the comments, and it's a good one. In a four-way stop, if a car who came first is waiting for pedestrians to cross, should the other car who came second wait? Well, that depends on how much longer the pedestrians will be blocking the car. For example, sometimes there are those rows of kindergarten kids crossing the street, and it takes them a while to cross. Since they're kids, they're going slowly. So in this case, if there's a vehicle there that arrived before me and wanted to turn to his left, he wouldn't have to wait since there's nobody blocking him. Another example, if there'd be a school bus stopped here blocking the street and there'd be a vehicle on the left that arrived before me, it would have to stay there. If it moves into the intersection, it'll be blocking it, so it has to stay behind. So it would make no sense for me to stay at the stop waiting for no reason, blocking everybody behind. In this case, I see this pedestrian as I arrive at the intersection, and there's the possibility that she'll cross the street, which is the case, so I stop and I wait. Now if this car arrives at the intersection while the pedestrian is over here, he can go. It'll still take a while before the pedestrian is not blocking my way anymore. If it arrives when she's over here, then he should wait for me to go first. So it'll depend on the situation. As with anything else in driving, you'll need to use your judgment. Now something that happens quite often with students is hesitation at an all-way stop. They've already stopped completely, then they see someone approaching on a perpendicular axis, they wait for them to stop, and they stay there, frozen, waiting for them to go, and another one, and so on. And the reason for that is that they focus so much on the vehicle itself that they don't look for clues to see if it has a stop. Forget about the vehicle for now. When approaching the stop, focus first on knowing if the other vehicle also has a stop. Look for the clues I mentioned in my previous video, the line on the floor, the back of the panel, the sub-panel under the main one, and so on. You have time to focus on that before you focus on the vehicle, since you'll need to stop anyway. You have a stop, remember? So determine that first and then go according to priorities. Or sometimes, students will say that it's because they're being courteous. Remember that there might be people behind you, So yes, you're being courteous to the people on your sides, not so much to the ones behind you though. So just go according to priorities. This also happens sometimes when there's nobody else arriving at the stop. So let's say you're doing your exam and you slow down too much or stop a second time without a reason, like if you were doing a two-way stop, you can be giving the impression to the examiner that you didn't even notice if it was a two-way stop or an all-way stop. And you don't want that at the exam. You want to show that you know what you're doing, that you analyze and understand your surroundings well. Now, you should still glance quickly to both sides when going, but you don't need to slow down or stop like it was a two-way stop if there's no reason to do so. Now, as you might have noticed, not everybody stops completely at stop signs. So be aware of that. If you arrived and stopped first, and you see someone arriving on the other axis that looks that they won't give you priority at all, just let them pass. And that happens quite often when other drivers see someone in a driving school car. They know that they'll stop completely and they don't want to wait for them. So you'll need to judge the situation. In situations like these, you have to react to other people's mistakes. If you don't, you might get braked and fail the exam. So don't rush it, but don't hesitate too much either. Again, use your judgment. In the next video, something a lot of people neglect, but they shouldn't: blind spots. So stay tuned and see you soon.